Fresh killer.
What up, tribe? I'm back in your face. I want to speak to you all today about the new documentary on Netflix called Jeen-yuhs, about the life of none other than Mr. Kanye West, about his rise to superstardom, about his relationships with his parents, particularly with Donda West, about his creative process, all seen through the eyes of his friend named Cootie. Now, I'm gonna dissect this a little bit, and there will be some spoilers abound, of course, like duh. And so, yeah, just be aware of that, okay? So, with no further ado, feels so good to be back here in front of you all, and let's get to it. As I stated before, the narrator is Kanye's friend, a gentleman named Cootie from The Chi, and he is the narrator, the director as well, possibly the writer. He did a lot of stuff. It's a 3-part series, and I want to come out the gate with a little bit of criticism, maybe a lot. He wasn't dynamic. The narrator wasn't dynamic. Cootie, the friend, he wasn't dynamic in terms of his voice, in terms of his perspective, and I never could adjust to that. It's about 5 hours long, and I just couldn't get over the way that he speaks. To tell you the truth, he seemed very disengaged. Now, that also speaks to the disengagement, also speaks to his relationship with the subject, because he was a comedian. The guy, Cootie, was a comedian in Chicago on the scene, but he worked for a local music network in Chicago, in which they would watch the up-and-coming hip-hop stars, right? They would showcase them, they would give them interviews, they would follow them, and they would promote them. And they felt like the Chi was gonna blow up. And this particular person, that was normally he was like a journalist that would interview people. He decides to get behind the camera, and he saw something in Kanye. He said, this kid is the person that's going to take the Chi to the next level. And he's like 6 years older than Kanye West, but he saw something in it, and I'm assuming that Kanye really needed that and gravitated towards people that believed in him as much as he believed in himself. And so he befriended this person. But at some point, the friendship became distorted, and this man that saw something in Kanye became reduced to a yes man. And a clinger on. And I'm reluctant to say that. I don't want to be disrespectful. I don't know the gentleman, but that's how I see it. And an example of this kind of yes man behavior was when he stopped doing his thing. He stopped doing comedy in order to follow Kanye to New York full time and videotape him, right? To be his personal videographer. I would not do that as a man, and I understand it could be, you can consider him to be a migrant worker. He was following where the opportunity was, he's following where the money was. Like, I can get that. One can easily say that, right? Like, you may move to Austin, Texas, because those are where the jobs are. If the jobs go to Atlanta, you would follow to Atlanta, right? Like, I understand, but there was something about the way that this situation went down that caused me some concern. And it got more intense because he had an up and down relationship with Kanye, and at some point Kanye would Kanye would say, oh, we don't want you on this tour, and he would sit that out. And then Kanye would be like, oh, we want you back. And so he was kind of used at Kanye's discretion. And so we see Kanye through the lens of this man, which is, and it offered a somewhat unique glimpse into Kanye, into his ambition, into the way that he treats the people who love him, and into the way that he ultimately treats himself. One scene that was really strong and telling for me was in part 3 of the documentary. And I believe it was called Awakenings. And it was after Kanye went through he had already gone through some mental breakdowns. He had already rose to the top and was super iconic. And he had a meltdown, and it came on the heels of the speech that he gave in South Carolina after he announced that he was running for president, where he was wearing what appeared to be a bulletproof vest, and he was in front of a crowd of people, and he spoke about him wanting to abort his daughter and also his father wanting to abort him, and he broke down. He was crying, and the media looked at it as a spectacular failure, as another example of Kanye's very bizarre, erratic behavior. Okay, if you remember that time, this is on the heels of that, and so Kanye had flown out to San Francisco, and he was going to see an artist studio, like someone did ceramics or something like that. He was a big fan of this particular artist, this lady. And so he's driving around San Francisco. He went across the Bay Ridge. Oakland got a shout out too. Like, I always like to see my city, my region shown on the screen on Netflix or movies or whatever, right? But back to the point. So he's riding around this car. It's full of yes men, the guy Cootie and like other men, and it's really like strange. It's almost like they're his disciples. And I guess if you're a follower of Christ, you should live in Christ's consciousness and live like Christ. But Kanye is definitely not the humble version of Christ. We all know that. But these people, like he's let me set it up. He's talking to his dad on the speakerphone. And he's got his dad right here. He's talking to his dad on the speakerphone. And when he's saying things, everybody in the car's like, yeah, oh, that's deep, brother. That's deep. They're all his hype man, but they're supposed to be his friends, and it was like really weird. And his father is there he's got his father on speakerphone. His father's FaceTiming him. And I wanted this, it was such a loaded scene. I wanna break this down, right? And his father says, I have the transcript here that I wrote down. Kanye's father says, "You're doing okay, right?" Kanye, "Yeah, how do you feel?" Kanye's father, "I feel good. I'm just concerned about you." Kanye, "Yeah, well, when you go out and say things like no abortion, you know how the media is going to be. That's a very strong Christian statement, and Christians are scrutinized and killed for our beliefs and following the word of God, and I use my voice, and I won't not use my voice because my voice is actually more powerful than even my finances, so they can't control me with finances." Kanye's father, "I'm just saying, write your speech next time, Kanye." Kanye, "Okay." So if you'll recall that speech, it was erratic. He was all over the place. His father's telling him to write his speech. And he didn't attack him. He didn't antagonize him for saying what he said or the content. He was just saying, "I want you to be focused." And in that moment, he revealed the significance of fathers to keep you focused, to keep you grounded within yourself. And Kanye, with this huge ego and high car in a city on the other side of the country with all of his friends, all he could say was, okay. I received, and it was, wow, it was so poignant. It was like, whoa, okay. Someone has the potential to keep this person focused, to kind of reel him back in. Right after that, I think it was the voice of Cootie, I don't know, but one of his friends, let's just say it's Cootie, said, "That's all right, we got him, Pops." So then Kanye looks at his person, puts the phone down and says, "Wait, hold on. My dad don't even remember you." I was like, what? What is going on? And the dude was like, "Oh, yeah, my bad." I'm like, what is happening? First off, I would never come at my homie like that. Secondly, he's trying to tell his father that, you're good, you're in his hands. Why would you get upset at that? And so he raged at the people that were trying to have his back. It was like wild, like he totally 100% had his friends in check. He couldn't check his dad, but he could check his friends, and his friends are who he surrounds himself with all the time. His father did not physically show up in the documentary. And so it goes to show what can happen when someone is genius and great at music, and his business sense is uncanny, and his vision is all of these things, all of these superlatives that Kanye represents, right? It's dangerous when you don't have people around you that can check you, and you can check everybody in your circle. And Kanye is the personification of that danger. So there was also there were scenes where I wanted it to extend. Kanye goes on rants, right? And if you're the dismissive type, you're just going to say Kanye's crazy. That's it, right? I'm not the dismissive type, and so a lot of things that he says I follow because he goes against the grain. Since George Bush does not like black people, to where he was speaking about the legacy that abortion has left on the black community in South Carolina, and in an interview that he had with Nick Cannon. I'm intrigued by what he says. I'm always looking for something that is not scripted. I'm always looking for something that goes against how we are conditioned to think. And so Kanye's that person. And so I'm tuning into the documentary because I want those moments. I want those rants. But the friend who had watched Kanye come up was made to feel uncomfortable by these rants. And so he was just like, oh, he's going off. And there were a few moments where he would put the camera down and stop filming. And I'm like, no! Contextualize, set this up, analyze, break this down, provide us with insight, but don't just stop filming. For example, they were on business in the Dominican Republic. Kanye's talking to these white people on the beach. The guy's pitching them idea. Oh, I think we can build a church here, and this, that, the other. And Kanye's just like, okay, all right. And then Kanye starts going off, and he says, there was a time in my career after the Taylor Swift incident where they tried to strap me down and pull my limbs off of my body. But they didn't know that I was Deadpool, that my limbs would grow back. And I'm like, whoa, they definitely tried to crucify Kanye after that incident, after the Taylor Swift incident. One could easily argue he put himself in that situation. I could totally understand. But him being very aware of the ways in which he is threatening, and the ways in which people try to put him back in his place, and the way that just galvanizes him to keep going, that's uncanny. And I like to see that displayed. And so the narrator said, well, I don't like to see him like this. He's going off. I don't like to see him in this state, and just put the camera down. I'm like, bruh, you are not the homie now. You need to get this content. I was like, there was a few moments when that happened, and so I was just like, I was left flabbergasted, to say the least, when that happened. But I also want to say so in general, there was a lot of testosterone. There was a lot of ego in the film, in the documentary. The undeniable star of the show, of the whole series, was Miss Donda West. There was Dr. Donda West. There was a scene in the first installment in her small Chicago apartment, right when Kanye is on the cusp, when he's trying to pitch himself not only as a producer, not only as a maker of beats for cheap, right? But he's trying to say, yo, I can rap, I can really do this. And people are like shooting him to the left, people aren't giving him a chance, people are seeing him in the hallways, being followed by a camera crew, and they're just like, hey, let me get one of them beats though. People don't want to hear him rap, people are just like tuning out when they hear him rap, right? And right at that moment where it's kind of, the wheels are kind of starting to turn, he goes to his mother's apartment. And the joy that she brings to him, the unequivocal, undeniable, angelic energy that she instills in him by supporting him and by saying, and he comes to her with his insecurities. And you get a sense that his mom is one of the few people, if not the only person, that he can come to weak and humble. His mother and God. And so he says to him, you know, do you think, talking about his ego, do you think, pretty much I'm paraphrasing, do you think I'm doing too much? She said, nah, you gotta have something. Like, you're great. You're great. Everybody that's great has that ego. And basically like, yo, keep doing you. Keep doing you. And then she recites his raps. Like she's his number one fan, his motivator, and she's always smiling. Like she always brings positive energy all of the time. And you get a sense of how hollow he must have been when she passed away. And how confused that he must have been. Because they were enmeshed, the two of them. Like they totally 100% leaned on another. In the Black community, we often say, don't spoil your kids. When we see other people's kids acting out, what do we say? He need his ass beat, right? He needs I wish my son would. I wish my daughter would, right? That's how we communicate. But when I'm watching this interaction, I'm thinking, yo, like maybe we should spoil our kids more. Maybe we should be more tender with our children. Because Kanye is iconic. He is global. And yeah, he has so many flaws, but his ambition is unmatched. And he made it. He made it out of South Chicago to Wyoming, to Los Angeles, to wherever he wants to live. And there was also a scene there where she's recalling a time in Kanye's childhood where Kanye says she goes to pick her son up from school. And he's playing with his friends. And he sees his mother come, and he screams out to his mother, I don't need you. And I'm like, oh my God, like I felt hurt. I felt hurt for her. I'm like, oh my God, like that would, you come to pick up your little guy and he's just like, I don't need you. But she didn't take it that way. She's still smiling, and she used that as an indicator of his character as far as like where he was, and she didn't say, I must have wore him out. She didn't say that. She just took it and she told him and just recited to him, and they're talking, and she's just like full of so much energy. It was like she was a hyperactive woman, and she fed off of all the energy that she fed off of all of his creative endeavors and everything that he brought to her, and she is so proud of him. And he needed that. He fed off of that in return. I've never seen two people that needed one another. They were one unit. I'm trying to tell you, in this documentary, it displayed that really they were one person. They were one body, I swear. And then when she passed away, it was like Kanye was half dead. And I knew that. I knew that that's what people were saying. I knew that he wrote the song, Hey Mama. He wrote that while she was alive. And he was like, my mom's my best friend. Like, people knew that. He lived with his mother at the time of her death, and I knew it. But to see that footage, oh my goodness, was so powerful. It's hard not to get emotional when you watch it. And so, for that reason, and just for the candidness of the documentary, I would highly recommend that you watch it. The narrator, listen, I didn't like the voice of the narrator. I did not like that, he was a yes man, but I have to give it up because he followed Kanye for over 20 years. He gave up his career as a comedian to invest full time in Kanye. He gave his devotion to Kanye, which I would not do, I would not recommend, but it takes a lot of dedication and belief in your project and belief in your work. He was doing other videos on the side, I should say. But it takes a very strong amount of faith to follow any subject for that long. And he put it together, and I would say that it's an extremely solid effort. I would rate it a solid 8 out of 10, and it comes with a high recommendation from me. So that's what it is. Jeen-yuhs is streaming on Netflix right now, all 3 parts. And let me know in the comments, what do you think about Kanye? What do you think about black people spoiling their kids or not spoiling their kids? What do you think about the documentary? What do you think about Cootie? Let me know. All questions, all concerns. I certainly appreciate you all. As always, it feels good to be home. For sure, man. Let me know. Like this as well. And subscribe to the tribe. Peace, tribe.